Okay everyone, today we're going to learn some basics for Adobe Illustrator, and this program is so much fun. So I'm excited that we can finally get started with working on things. So I'm just going to go through a bunch of different steps that you can use. Basically, this is just going to be a practice assignment, and we're going to end up making a bunch of crazy weird shapes and blobs. But I think this will be a good exploration for you guys, and it'll help you get your feet wet with learning about Adobe Illustrator. So first we need to open a new document. So I have Adobe Illustrator open here, and we need to open something new. So you will go to File at the top, and I'm using a PC, so this might look slightly different with a Mac, but all of these should be along the top of your screen on a Mac as well. So you will go to File and New. And so from here you can type in a name, practice assignment, and naming stuff will just help you when you save things. You'll know exactly what file is which without having to open a bunch of files. Profile, this is kind of interesting. You can change it to what you're going to use it for. So if you're planning on printing this, you'll probably want to leave it on print. If you're going to publish this to the web, then you'll want to leave it on web. We're probably not going to end up doing anything with this other than turning it in. So this doesn't really apply right now, but just keep that in mind. Maybe with certain things, you'll probably want to change this up a little bit, and that's where you do it. You can also convert stuff after you've finished stuff. So let's say you've made something in the print and you want to convert it to a web, then you can do that. But basically, this is just for this changes the settings of what you'll end up making so that it'll work better with going on the internet or getting printed out. Okay, letter, these are just standard sizes, and you can change the units if you want it in inches or if you want it in points or pixels. But letter is basically the size of a piece of paper, just so you know. If you want it bigger or smaller, then you'll just change that here. And I believe that's just about it. CMYK, that is better for printing. RGB is better for web. So this is just more advanced stuff that we don't really need to worry about right now. And we'll probably just leave it at print. You will hit OK. And you will end up with this. Basically, it's like a digital piece of paper that you can now draw on. So once you have your document, it's important to make sure that the computer program is set up in a way that will be helpful. And one way is to make sure most of your screens will probably look like this, with this on the right side showing only the icons. I like to drag it out a little bit, so if you hover your mouse over that edge, you can pull it out slightly. And this will show you the words for each icon, so that way you don't have to keep clicking on them and finding the wrong one. So it's really helpful to have your screen set up this way. So notice that we have kind of a top area. This is kind of like a control panel for each tool that you use. This is kind of the toolbar area, which you can change different tools to work with. And this is kind of just a basic area that will help with everything else. So first off, we're going to learn how to create a perfect circle or a perfect square. And to do that, you are going to click the rectangle tool. We'll make a square first. So it's this tool over here. And notice that this icon has a little white triangle in the corner of it. If you click down on it and you hold that click, then you will be able to change the different shapes that you want. So we could make a rectangle, we could make a rounded rectangle, we could make an ellipse. All of these different things we can make with this one tool. And if you click over here on this very edge, it turns dark when I hover over it, then it'll actually, whoops. Then it'll kind of change up the way it looks. and it will pop out that menu so that you can have easy access to changing shapes. So we're going to work with the rectangle tool, and we're going to try and make a perfect square. Now all you're going to do is you're going to click on your paper. You're going to hold that, not your paper, but the document. You're going to hold that click and you're going to drag out your rectangle. And notice you have to be pretty precise to get a perfect square, and that pink line will emerge when it's perfect. Okay, there's actually a way easier way to do this, and that is by clicking, holding down Shift, and releasing. So that will give you a perfect shape. Now notice that everywhere I click, I create a new square. If you don't want that, and you need to move stuff around, then you need to click on this black mouse, which is called the selection tool. As long as you're clicking on that, then you should be able to move things around. So let's go back to the shape tool, which is normally over here, but remember I popped it out so that it's up here now. I'll get rid of that and I'll show you how to do that again. So you'll click and hold on the rectangle tool. You'll hover over to this edge and that pops out nicely. So let's make an ellipse. It's basically the same exact thing. You're going to click and drag. If you want to make a perfect circle, you will click and drag and you will hold Shift at the same time to make a nice circle. So that's how you create some basic shapes. Notice that if you click on different shape tools, you can make different shapes. You can kind of move them around, all that good stuff. So it's an essential tool, even though it's pretty easy to use. So it's good to know how to do that. We're going to now work on changing up our shapes. So I'm going to get rid of this window. And I'm going to click on the Transform tool. Free transform. So it's this tool right here that has like a mouse and then a rectangle in the background with dots and stuff. So you'll click that and notice this little menu popped up. And these are different things you can do with your shape. I'm actually going to select a different shape to work with. I'll work with a square because I think that might be easier. So if you click on Constrain, that means if you try and change the shape, then usually your height and width ratios will stay the same when you drag out the corner. So that's Constrain. If you click on Free Transform, then you can move things around. You can change certain widths. If you click on Perspective Distort or Free Distort, then you can pull out certain areas and really change things up, change up the shapes. So my square just kind of became kind of like a rhombus. So that's how you change things up. And so notice if I kept clicking, I would have kind of messed it up, but I clicked on the mouse tool or the selector tool. So now I can move that around. So let's color. Let's add some color to one of our shapes. One of the easiest, there's several different ways to add color. And the easiest way to tell your colors what they are is to look in this area down here. This top square is the fill, and this bottom square is the stroke. And what that means is this is the color that is inside of your shape. And right now it's white. This is the color that is basically the line that created your shape. So all of them are black. So let's change this. You'll double click on the color you want to change, and then you can change different colors by looking through this area right here. So I'll make it blue. Notice I'm selecting different colors of blue, and then whatever I select ends up right here, and so that's how you can tell which color you want. I'll hit OK, and that immediately changed. Let's also work on changing the stroke. So you could do that down here as well, the same way, but I'll show you a different way. You can also do that up here. So remember, this is kind of a control panel for working with your shapes or whatever you're working on. If you want to change your stroke color, then you can also hit this down arrow, and you get a few less colors, but you can work with them here as well. So I'm going to make it orange, and I'm going to change the thickness. This is where you change the thickness. Notice it's only 1 point, and so I'm going to make it thicker. I'll make it really thick. Okay, you see, did you see that change? I'll undo it. So notice it was pretty small, and now it's thicker. So with this, you can change the way your stroke is. You can make it uniform. You can make it bulged or lumpy. You can kind of change the style right here, kind of like it's rough around the edges. I'm going to stick with basic. So this is all stuff that you can experiment with later. And then opacity also is important, where you can change the transparency of it or not. So it's really transparent right now, and it's very opaque right now. So that looks good to me. Oops. So I'm going to click on my selection tool again. I'll just move that. And then opacity, once again. If I make it transparent, then you can see this square behind it. And I want to make that stroke bigger. There, perfect. So that's how you add color to things. Now to copy a path, you're going to click on Alt. Now this is basically a pathway. It's kind of like a mathematical equation that makes a square. To copy it perfectly, you will hold down the Alt or Option key on your keyboard. You'll click on your object and you'll drag it out. So I've just copied now that square, and it's underneath certain squares or it's over the top of certain squares, and that depends on basically the ordering of when it was made. And you can change that arrangement by right-clicking on your shape that you want to move to the front or the back and clicking on Arrange and Bring to Front. So that's pretty simple. That's how you copy a path. Now I want to work on merging a pathway. So I'm going to combine all these different shapes. We're going to try and merge them together. So to do this, you're going to need the Pathfinder, and it's this window right here. So you're going to go up to Window and scroll down to Pathfinder. And so to merge everything, you're going to select all of the shapes you want to merge together, and then you will click on Unite. You could click on Unite. You could also, there's a variety of ways that you can merge things. So we've merged all these things now, and it's basically just this one piece. But notice how the white shapes made a difference in the fills of things, and so keep that in mind with your shapes and your opacities and stuff like that. We can even maybe, there's no stroke in this, but we might be able to give it another stroke. So yeah, you can still change things around, but notice how each is, it's basically its own shape now, whereas before we could move them all around. So that's really just a basic introduction to Illustrator. Feel free to you can explore all of these tools whenever you get time. We're going to move on to some more complex Illustrator projects next week. So maybe just use this time to become more comfortable to explore with Illustrator. Remember, this is just kind of like an exploration phase, and so if you get to a point where you mess things up, you can always just start over and continue your exploration. So that is a basic introduction to Illustrator. Now, to save files, you want to go to File, and then if you click on Save As, you will notice that this saves as a Adobe Illustrator file. You can change that to a PDF for if you're turning something in really quickly. But if you want to export this into, let's say, a JPEG or something that's an actual image, then you can go down to, you can click on File, you'll go down to Export, and you'll click on Export As, and these are all the different file types you could export it to. So a JPEG is a photo file that you could basically use on any website and it will look like a photo. PSD, that's a Photoshop file. All of these are different photo files that you could save it as, but basically when you turn stuff in, it's good to turn them in as a JPEG. So when you turn them in for this assignment, make sure you export it as a JPEG, and then you'll save it that way, and you'll hit export.